folks, welcome everybody to this week's episode of She's All Talk Live. I am your host, Leslie Ann. What another week it's been, as I always start with this madness. It's kind of a week closer to summer. The weather has been a bit nuts. Have you heard the wind out there tonight? Unbelievable. Nothing really major happening. I know the what do they call it? The golf has started, so I'm sure there's an awful lot of women out there that are just sitting on their own while the husband watches the golf. What else have we had? The news coming out of the Ukraine. Oh God, it is just dreadful. I seen that President Zelensky, he addressed the House of the Oireachtas today, and oh my God, my heart absolutely goes out to him. It made me very sad to see one of the political parties not clapping for him. I think they're afraid of our neutrality here in Ireland. But when you think of all that poor man has to put up with and what he's trying to do and how he's trying to fight for his country, and I don't know, it would make you very sad to see what's coming out of there. I came across an article the other day, actually, and it was about a book. And it was about a book called The Black Pool. And I was just reading a little synopsis on it, and it's the type of stuff that I'm like, that makes you go, my God, wow. Especially being a dub, especially living in Ireland, of course, and the times we've been living in. I was born in the 80s, and I remember, we all remember the big heroin epidemic here in Dublin, and how the city and all the suburbs started in the kind of city centre, and all this, how the suburbs just kind of became a wash of heroin and drugs and everything, and this gangland and this just madness. So that's what this book was about, and I was like, okay, I need to get my hands on this book. So I went on and I see if I could order it on Amazon, and then I kind of googled the author, and I got in touch with him through Instagram, and I was hoping he'd say yes, he'd come on the podcast. This is the type of stuff I love, but I also love the behind the scenes part of making a book like this, because I'm sure it's not easy. So I am going to introduce my next guest, and his name is Robert Sargent. Thank you so much for coming on my podcast, Robert.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
I'm delighted. Like, as I said, this is the type of stuff that not only I'm interested in, but like the majority of the country really kind of, people's ears prick up when they hear about the kind of drugs epidemic in Dublin and all the kind of crime that goes hand in hand with it and stuff. So I'm going to start off with, you bring me right back to the start as when you were growing up.
Yeah, well, I grew up in Crumlin, and a place called Windmill, and I was just at the back of Crumlin Village, for those who know, or where Crumlin United or Crumlin GAA plays, just around the corner from there. And I was born in 1972, so I grew up right the way through all of everything I wrote about in the book. You know, no, I was never an addict myself. I never took heroin or any drugs like that, but I grew up seeing it through my own eyes, what happened and the devastation that it caused, and the devastation that crime caused, and the gangs and the gangland activity that it caused. And still to this day, it's causing the same thing as well across the board. You know, it's not just that it happened years ago and it's gone away, it's still here now. But the idea surrounding the book came, I used to be a Dublin City Councillor, and when I gave up that, I kind of have a bit more time on my hands, and I said to my wife one day, I'd like to write a book, and she says, well, why don't you? And it was really like, it was that simple. And I says, I have a story there that I might be able to tell. And it began from there, and I started writing originally about the early 80s when the drugs came in, and Crumlin would have been on, you know, the periphery of what happened there, like, you know, in the inner cities and around
that's true, the
community that I grew up. Like, I mean, it was only like a 15-minute walk from the inner city, which were devastated from the drugs. And for those who were not old enough to remember it, the city was devastated by it. You know, it really, really was. And I go into some detail in the book on that as well. But the whole thing I started writing, and I was kind of like, you know, I think I can bring this a little bit further, like, you know, because I didn't want to leave it as just one era in time. You know, so like the person I write about in the book was born in 1969, and then it takes him on a kind of a 40-year journey in the book from where he began to where he got to, and it kind of it takes in the whole thing of, and you'll remember this as well, of not just the heroin epidemic, it takes the step up then into the rave scene in Dublin and
Wow, yeah.
and ecstasy, and how the ecstasy, was everywhere, and why politicians were going to watch raves in the Mansion House and everybody was chilled out and says, oh, this is great. Not realising that they were all fairly happy because they were on
Exactly.
biscuits.
Exactly.
The
disco biscuits, as they
Disco.
called them. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it was kind of that, and then I kind of got to there, and I was kind of going, I think I really have to make this now as a kind of a historical crime drama type of thing, and then I
And
continued.
it was really even that time, even without the crime incorporated in it. When you talk about like the dance, the rave scene, people would have probably had a little bit more money, and they would have went abroad.
Yeah,
The youngsters, do you know what I
Well,
mean?
it
To
was that,
these raves.
exactly, because what happened was, when the rave scene kicked off in the late 80s and into the early 90s, a place called Ibiza kicked in.
Oh, yeah.
Well-known Ibiza now, but what?
Yeah.
And within the book, it's all explained about this. I don't want to give too many spoilers away.
Yes, definitely don't. I can't wait.
Ibiza was a hippie commune, and
That's right, yeah.
in the Balearic Islands, and some DJs, well-known DJs, found it, and then they started off this kind of iconic dance scene that just kind of erupted across the globe. But Ibiza, of people of that age will know, Ibiza became this mecca for the dance scene and partying. And the book takes you to Ibiza for a couple of years as well with the gang, and they lived there for reasons. There, from the heroin into the rave scene and then into Ibiza. So that's kind of the steps, and then from there on in, there's other stories that happened within the 90s, and then it carries on and takes you into another level of how they become more successful in crime. Now, this is not a bedtime storybook. I'm going to put it straight out there. This book is raw. It's rough. It's violent. It kind of takes you inside the gangland world that's out there, and it takes you into the underbelly of it as well, and it shows you how they build and what they do to get to where they want to be. And let's just say there's wonderful people built in it.
Yeah. And so did this all start in the inner city itself and then kind of spread to the suburbs, or had it already been there? Had it been different parts of the country, or do you think it came literally from obviously overseas? I don't know where they got the heroin from, obviously, but did it start overseas, inner city, and spread?
Yeah, because Dublin at that time wasn't this big, massive sprawl that it is now. The likes of in the 70s, Tallaght and the likes of them in Ballymun were only built in the late 60s, early 70s. You kind of had Dublin's inner city, and you kind of have people who are living in the inner city from the tenements, where the protagonist I write about comes from the inner city and moves to Crumlin. And then you had the next ring out, which would have been the Tallaghs, and then people moved from Crumlin to Tallaght. The next generation, the next generations would have moved out further again, or that type of thing. But heroin,
that's what we were saying before we went live. I come from Ballyfermot, so it was kind of more people from the inner city that my mum and dad got a new house out there, and then all of a sudden these people from the inner city kind of spread to the suburbs because they were living with their grannies and stuff, and it did kind of seem to kind of spread out. Ballyfermot, Tallaght, all these new houses, and they became their own new kind of centre for
because what it was is that people need to remember that the Dublin city tenements were not that long ago. It was only 100 years ago. And then the likes of you got your Cabrers and your Finglas and your Crumlins and your Drunans and your Ballyfermots that were built in the 30s, and you had families moving to these sprawling areas over time. And then again, as we said, the next kind of phase out would have been your Ballymuns and your Tallaghs.
The north side, okay.
Yeah, so I mean, yes. So a lot of the heroin epidemic did hit the kind of the north and south inner city areas. Like one of the most famous drug dealers in Ireland comes from Crumlin, and we all know who he is.
Okay, yeah.
So, him and another man from the inner city, from the flats in the inner city in around Kilmainham Street. Okay. So they were two of the main people who brought that heroin to Ireland. So within the book, the protagonist himself, he would meet one of the people who brought the stuff in, and then they start working with them within the inner city and surrounding areas, and then they kind of grow from there. That's that's where they came from. Because
Where did the drug? Because I'm always fascinated. Like, where did the heroin come from? Like, was it over the UK, or was it further afield they got it from, or did they have this big?
yeah, no,
angle?
you wouldn't have grown the heroin in the UK. It comes from more like
like Afghanistan. I know it comes from the poppy seed and stuff.
Yeah,
but who would have kind of
you've got the
their
golden
main?
You got the golden triangle and the golden circle, which would have been like Laos and Vietnam and Afghanistan and places like that. That's where the likes of that. Where on the other side of the globe, you've got the cocaine coming from South America, where the Colombia and so on.
I get you now.
So where the like of the hashish is, a lot of it's coming from Africa and stuff like that, but people are growing it in their attics. In the shed out
in Ireland, they try anything.
You know, but the original that's where a lot of that comes from, and so they met up.
They got it in somehow.
You know, but in the book, I kind of do go into a lot of detail in relation to how they smuggle stuff into the country.
Yes.
Like there is a lot of that in that, because
and that's what people want to know. Yeah, people love to hear them.
Yeah, because he was only born in 1969, you couldn't have an 11-year-old being a heroin dealer, you know.
Of course.
Not trafficker, you know. Well, he probably not far off being that age, being heroin dealers, but he couldn't be heroin traffickers at that age group. Yeah. You know, so I got them involved with the person who kind of started it previous to that, and give a little background to that fella. And as I said, it all comes together as you're reading it.
Yeah.
But the whole story is surrounded from them being heroin dealers, how they were doing it, how they got it out there, and how they, you know, made their network within Dublin, and then how it kind of grew from that.
So tell me about, the fascinating thing will be obviously all your research for this book. And you had your background would have been, you would have been a Dublin City Councillor. Yeah. So did you have a lot of, I'm sure you would have had so much knowledge of that anyway. And did you kind of incorporate that with your bit of research you were doing? Did you know where to go for your research? You know, stuff like that.
You know, yeah. I mean, I incorporated it all together because your knowledge of being in a local and the whole thing of write what you know. And this is why I'm writing it from kind of the inner city Crumlin area. But it goes further afield as time goes on as well. It's not just stuck in that area. Because there's no point in me writing without Ballymun or Finglas, because I don't know the area. So I wrote exactly where I come from and where I know, and familiarity with the streets and the back streets. And
you're on the ground, basically. You're in the belly of the beast. Yeah. You're there.
Let me be, first and foremost, let me say that Crumlin and the likes of those areas are fantastic places with fantastic people. It's just that bad people ruined it for a lot of people.
Absolutely. And that's where they could make their money, basically.
Yeah. Like, I mean, They don't care about you, me, your kids, or anybody else. They just care about getting the product out there and making money on it. And I, in no uncertain terms, I make that clear within the book as well. You know, so when I started writing the book, it was kind of like, as I said, it grew as it went along, because I didn't expect it was going to grow to what it was, because it's the 127,500 word book. So like it's a chunky old book, like, you know.
Yeah.
But within the book, from the feedback I'm getting from people, because we gave it out to people to research that. I don't know, by the way, some of the people who read it.
Oh, do these have to be kind of
reviewers?
Yeah. They can't have any like connection to you or whatever. Like,
Well, like my mother read it and she says I'm great. But,
well, come here. Yeah. My mother could read that and I write, and she'd still love it as well.
She said there's an awful lot of language in it, but she can get over that. But
come here, that's us dubs.
But yeah, it was given out, and people came back and they were kind of going like, it's raw. It gets right under there. There's no editing from, oh no, you can't say that. It's said in the book, you know, and it comes out as that, like, there is murder, mayhem, drug dealing, sex, violence, rock and roll. You know, there's drug smuggling, there is armed robberies, there's prison time, there's cocaine, there's heroin, there's hash, guns, you name it's in there. You know, the dodgy attorneys and so on and so forth. It's all in it. But in essence, it is a story of a fictitious gang, but it is a historical drama of a lot of stuff that happened within Dublin, Ireland, and surrounding areas, if you want to put it like that. You know.
Yeah.
So it
I like the fact it's almost unfiltered. Because nothing about the streets is filtered. Everything is, like you said, raw, you know, madness.
I mean, like one or two people told me that it was, and the one word that everybody comes back with is it's violent, it's
Mm.
spine tingling, it's raw, it pulls no punches.
Yeah.
One even said they're a shower of little bastards, if I'm allowed to
Oh
say it.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah, absolutely.
and the one major positive for myself that I'm getting back from the feedback from it is that everybody is saying that they're scum.
Yeah,
And
and that's what you want. And they
yeah,
were little bastards and they were
yeah,
scum, like, do
exactly.
you know what I mean?
I didn't want them to make out look like the anti-hero type of thing. I wanted to make them out to what they are. And
Yeah.
um, when you read the book, you'll know you're kind of going, Jesus, he didn't pull any punches on it.
Yeah.
But
All bullshitting aside, everybody knows what we are living, what we were living, what we are living in,
yeah,
you know, and they don't know obviously how in depth it was, but reading your book is going to tell them, because
like,
although this is a fictitious character,
yeah,
it is also very, very real.
it is very real. But look, let me just say as well is that I ain't the all-knowing either here. Like, you know what I mean? I'm just saying it as I've seen it, as a story I'm telling. But a lot of the story that I'm telling, a lot of people will kind of go, yeah, that's it. And they were like that. And this is what they were. And yeah, this did happen. And that did happen, because we can't sugarcoat it. The heroin epidemic happened. The rave scene happened. The gangland feud over the control of Dublin and Ireland for the cocaine industry all happened. And there are people smuggling drugs into Ireland. So that's all in it.
Yeah.
You know, and people go to prison and people come back out of prison. And it's all in a kind of rolled into one big story there.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Tell me about the Celtic Tiger days on the cocaine, because heroin was one side of things, right?
Yeah.
And then we had the really kind of wealthy people doing the coke.
That's right.
And you would have the wealthy CEOs of corporations, we'd have the politicians doing the coke. We all know about certain people being caught in New York with prostitutes, you know, stuff like that. Yeah. Like that is another side of things that
it is.
It's not just the poor unfortunate drug addicts that you'd see being scraped up off the street in Dublin city centre. This was a huge, big
industry.
Big, huge thing.
Yeah, it's an industry. Let's be straight out about it, because again, I don't want to be giving too many spoilers away, but all that cocaine stuff and all of what you're talking about, it sounds like you've read the book. It's all in there.
I know. I'm too nosy. I love all that stuff. That's why you're here.
Well, yeah, what happened was that cocaine in the 70s and the 80s really was always known as the rich man drug, because let's say it was £50 for a line.
A little bag.
Let's just say that, right? But then what happened was that in the Celtic Tiger era, there's actually a section when he goes to prison. Shocker, your man goes to prison. That's not a spoiler, you know, and he comes out from an Ireland of the underground rave scene to an Ireland of, you know, Temple Bar, if you want to call it that.
Yes,
you know, where it's changed over such a short
period. Very different. And almost living along the poverty line. Everybody's living on the poverty line. Now all of a sudden everybody has a few quid in their pocket.
And everybody's working, and it's kind of like, Jesus. Yeah. And then it gets mentioned to him in the book, you know, that it's snowing out there is the term I think I used. And
right.
And then he does his research on the cocaine industry, and it's kind of like, wow, Jesus Christ, like, you know. So they get involved with that. So what happened was it came from being the rock stars and the movie stars and the politicians to taking cocaine to, I don't want to say any, just, you know, to everybody.
Down the road. Yeah, exactly.
You know, everybody taking it. And what was happening there is that it was kind of like, the powers that be were ignored, and surprise. And like, I again write about that in the early 80s when the heroin epidemic.
Brilliant, yeah.
You just brush it under the carpet and it'll go away. And it didn't go away, and it still hasn't gone away. And we still have many heroin addicts out there nowadays, you know.
Yeah.
And that comes down to the failure of the state in a way as well, you know.
It does, yeah.
Responsibility in it all. But the likes of the heroin, everybody was taking it. It was everywhere, you know. And it still is. And it just took off. And I mean, it's like people were going into rehab. It was like when the government came in with methadone, and you had heroin addicts, you just turned them into methadone addicts, you know. And now you have
dreadful.
Yeah, and now you have now you have the cocaine, and people are screaming out for help. Like, the cocaine has got a hold of them, where people are going, I only take it at the weekend, I'm grand. But then you start taking it Thursday, a Friday, a Saturday, and a Sunday. It's not only.
It's horrible, because the amount of people you see talk about, they go out and they do a bag at the weekend. Like that's an actual term. Like that, I've heard, because like I grew up I was born in the 80s, so I grew up in the kind of naughty side of things.
Yeah.
And you do hear a lot of people going, "Oh, geez, I was on the bag," and I did be like, and these are women. They're young lads who have a career. Like, I mean,
it's everybody. Look, I mean, I was 17 in 89, so I seen the heroin, and then I was in my heyday, if you want to call it that. I was 27 in 99, so I was out having a good time. But like, I mean, it came in, and then the gangs kind of got a hold of this, and I said, "Hang on a minute here, like we've got something here now." And then with the Celtic Tiger, with so much money out there, another gang was saying, "Hang on, I want some of that as well. Why is he getting on that?"
Yeah.
And there was another gang saying, "Here, we could do with some of that as well." And then boom, it all came together, and it kicked off. And as we all know, we had a bit of a row in Ireland.
Oh, absolutely. And it seems to be as well, like a lot of kind of maybe during the Celtic Tiger and maybe post Celtic Tiger, after we kind of went into recession. So we went into recession, now we were out of it.
Yeah.
But you'd see an awful lot of kind of money being washed through certain businesses and stuff like that. And it's so bloody apparent that that's what's happening. And that's another side of things where you're like, am I the only person who sees this?
Yeah, believe it or not, it's in the book. And so the whole thing is covered. It's like, you've got these gangs, and they have, some people think they have money. They have a lot of money, a lot of money out there. And yes, they're washing it through different things, through, casinos and race courses and buying buildings and so on and so forth, and buying, companies, and it's all out there. And I mean, they are making a fortune. And when there's a lot of money involved like that, and it's illegal, something's got to give. Somebody else wants some of it, and somebody wants a bit of the pie, and then someday it has to come to a head, and it has over the last
years. Robert, tell me, when did you start writing this book, and how long did it take you?
I started writing, would you believe, around 2010-ish. And it took that long because again, the Celtic Tiger, the back end of it fell over, and my family were very, very young at that time. So babies. And the book was kind of like, a thing over there.
Nappies first. School runs first. Yeah.
Well, they were even that young, not even school runs at that time when I started writing. So I kind of done it for about a couple of years, and like I've written this book before the likes of Love Hate was even heard of,
Okay.
So I would have
of course, it's 2010.
I would have had 85% of it written by 2013. And then I kind of gave it a miss for about 3 years. And then I got myself started working and all that, everything back at track. And then I went back to around 2016, 2017, and finished it in 2018.
Okay.
And we're finishing it. That was the first proper draft, if you get me. And then I done about 3 or 4 drafts after that. Gave it to a couple of people to have a look at, and they have a look. All in all, it was probably about 9 drafts before I presented it.
Really?
Yeah, and it was in March, would you believe? March 2020, would you believe? When I got accepted for the book. And what happened in March 2020?
That's it. Yeah, she hit the fan big time.
Kind of give me a break, So, and it was on March 31st of this year that the book was released officially. So it took 2 years from the, but like there was printers.
Well, that 2 years kind of, when you think of it, has disappeared, because it didn't really, like, we all had our head up our arses. We weren't really living in the world, so it's not as if it's 2 years that you could have been out there that it wasn't, so all wasn't lost.
It was around December, I think it was December, was it? Yeah, it was around December, January 2018 into 2019 that I started throwing the book out there, and I heard nothing. For months, and I must have sent it out. Now I'm talking Irish and English or British companies, publishing companies here. A lot of them are tied into American companies, but I didn't think.
Are they?
Yeah, they're all tied in together. And then I sent it out, and then it was around probably November 2019 that I started getting a bit of feedback, and companies started coming back to me and kind of going, "Oh, I'm interested in this." I was going, really? Interesting. I was thinking, like, this thing is never getting off my laptop. Never mind. So come around the just before Christmas 2019, I had 4 companies interested in it. And,
that's good.
Yeah, it was great. It was great.
Yeah, that's
We're
really good.
none of the massive
Yeah,
companies. But I
yeah.
done a research on them all, and it was Austin Macaulay's in London. Who
Okay.
they were getting a pretty good feedback for the kind of an independent company. And
Yeah.
I says, yeah, well, look, let's talk. And then they brought it in and they gave it to the big boys and all that. And they go, yeah, we want to do this. And I says, yeah, let's do it, you know.
Yeah.
And I have to say now, so far it's been very good with them. You know, they've done everything that they said they've been able to do.
Yeah, yeah.
The only problem is that I'm not J.K. Rowling or Stephen King.
You see, this is it. But come here. Do you know, I just thought a question came to my head when you said you're writing this well before our Love Hate. When you looked at, because I would be like this, looking at Love Hate, going, they robbed my story. They're after robbing my story. That's my story.
To be honest with you, you could write 100 crime books in Dublin, and you'd probably have about 35% of the same thing in every one of them.
Yeah, I suppose they all start somewhere. Yeah,
and the Love Hate story was just based in and around Dublin and a gang in and around Dublin, and didn't really go any further afield from that. In bits, it did. Where this one starts off, like this one covers a lot. This covers everything. This covers the 20 years previous to them lads and the 20 years after them lads, you know. And it takes,
that's brilliant. As
I said, it takes in everything, and it's the same gang of fellas from the age of kind of 11 to their late 40s and everything in between. So, as I said, Love Hate was okay. I thought it was okay, like, you know, for what it was. But this is absolutely nothing like Love Hate.
You're following not just like a gang of lads at the same time. You're following people from the inception of all of this, all the way, which is brilliant.
Yeah,
you know, because it stems over a couple of years.
Yeah, well, it's 43 years or something like that, and that is why the publisher has it down as an adult historical crime drama.
Okay.
And the historical comes into it because, as I said, it starts in 1969 and finishes around 2018.
So they're a couple of genres in one, aren't they? Really, like.
Well, yeah, I mean, it takes in crime, it takes in, you know, smuggling, it takes in corruption. It takes in murder, mayhem. But the thing is that I kind of tried to stay true, and the feedback I'm getting is that I stayed true to what the story was, and I didn't veer off to them being Hollywood stars and you know, living some massive mansion. But they do have big houses in Spain and.
As you do, for God's sake. I'm still waiting on mine.
I don't go Hollywood on it, if you want to put it like that. Yeah. I stick to the story of what it is. And one of the things about the book was that one of the publishers goes to me, goes, "Hey, Robbie, mate," he goes, "You know, what's wrong with the G's?" And I go, "What? What's wrong with the G's?" He goes, "Yeah, you don't put a G in the end of any word." And I went, I says, "Look," I says, "I actually know what you mean by that." I said, "This is only in the dialogue he was talking about." I says, "In Dublin, where I come from," I says, "we don't like the letter G for some reason, because
it's
leading, it's it's right, it's thinking, it's fucking, you know,
it's fucking."
And I says, I put the dialogue in there because that's how we talk. There was one part where
you see, I love that because automatically you are reading the book in your own accent.
Yeah, and exactly that's what it is, and it's true to what a Dublin story is. It's like someone coming around, you're the bleeding thick.
Yeah, bleeding dope. Yeah.
You're a bleeding dope, you're bleeding thick. Because there was one part in the book where your man turns around and goes, "What are we going to do about your L1's fella?" And they wanted to charge it to moms. And I was saying, I said, "No way." I says, because in the inner city Dublin, I call my friend's ma his L1.
His L1.
My ma, me L1. I call my ma me ma.
Exactly.
Oh, he says, "I get you." I said, "So don't change that." And I told you the one thing with the book is you don't touch the dialogue, because it's all like you fucking take it, bleeding need you, and so on and so forth. And it's all as you're kind of having a conversation without actually knowing you're having a conversation. That you're leaving out the G's.
Yeah. You're not pronouncing the T's at the end of things. I remember somebody used to say to me, I say, "I'm going to me toilet." Right? So it's like going to the toilet. Exactly, don't say that. There's a T at the end of it. No, there's not. Toilet will do.
Like, as I said to him, it's a demographic dialogue.
Yes.
So there's no point in me turning around and going, "All right, mate, to somebody in Dublin because we wouldn't say that.
No.
So it's said out as that because some of the terms that may be said by them in 1985 is how I would have said something to somebody. Like, don't be a bleeding spat.
Yes.
Right. Where in 2015, your man say, stop being a fucking dog or something. You know,
exactly.
And you kind of have to stick with the proper dialogue because there's no point in me and having like two fellas in a gangster thing kind of going, all right, for the control of Dublin, rock, paper, scissors, let's see who fucking wins. Yeah. It doesn't work that way. The language in it, the violence is like it's real and it's what it is. Like, you know, if somebody stepped out of line, somebody got shot in the head for doing something stupid or ratting, as you call it.
Yeah.
And people kind of go, "Oh, that's terrible." No, that's
it. That is what it is.
So it works. So yeah, it's kind of like it's very Dublin dialogue, but I mean anybody could get the gist.
Read it. Yeah, because sometimes when you're reading a book, like, you know, it could be a book based in the UK and it has like the Cockney slang in it or the Liverpoolian slang. Like you have to have that in order to bring you there.
Many people here watch Coronation Street. I haven't a clue what they're saying half the time now because I don't watch it. But like Coronation Street or EastEnders, or even when Brookside was on with the Scousers and that. You know what I mean? I was you know, but it is that, and like it is kind of like they're dressed in shell suits in the late 80s.
Yeah.
You know, they're dressed in hoodies, they're dressed in tracksuit bottoms. You know, they're wearing their runners. Or sneakers or shoes, whatever you call them nowadays.
Yeah.
You know,
they're runners.
It's all to that. And also within the book as well, if I say that Tuesday, the 25th of August, 1989 was a Tuesday, believe me, it's a Tuesday.
Okay.
Because I looked into it.
Oh, yeah.
So every day and every date in the book is actually on the money. And any car or any house they bought or a key of cocaine or heroin is as close as I could get in research to how much it actually was on that day. So if I say that, so if I say that they're bringing in like 60 keys of hash and it was costing them 60 million, I can guarantee you a couple of million either side them out.
Okay.
That's how much detail I went into it, and even the
because the street value back then would have been so different to now. Yeah. So
it is because like it's as close to the day that it was. I mean, like there was even
you were doing it in pounds as well, so there's no euro.
Oh yeah, and I remember when the euro came in, and I actually because the pounds, shillings, and pence didn't come into it because he was only born in '69. So
so that being
late 70s when he was a kid. But even with the likes of the euro coming in, I got to the fine day. So if they were selling the key on the day before the euro, I was selling it for pounds, and if they're selling the key the day after the euro came in, they were selling it for euros. You know,
that's good.
Yeah, so it's all pretty to the money. And I mean, with the detail in it, it was like there was the flats in town. Now I gave them different names and so on. People can surmise whatever the ones the way they want.
And you just have to, don't you? Yeah.
People put two and two together, 5 all they want, you know, because I've got that from a couple of people who have read it. Is that? I said, yeah, well, it could be. It's in that direction, you know. But, none of the names or anything in it are real, but again, it's the story. Is the story?
Yeah, it's up to yourself. Yeah.
You know, it's history, you know. But there was one kind of thing where they were dealing the heroin and they were using an abandoned flat in a flat complex.
Okay.
And they were mixing the heroin and getting the bags ready in there. And 2 corporation workers walked in and they just looked. And your man turns around and says, "Right, lads, you can fuck off and come back in an hour. We'll be out here." And then that's the end of it. They went back and got the flat ready and they were gone and they moved off to another abandoned flat somewhere else. You know.
Madness.
Yeah.
That's what it was like though, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And as I said, like when they meet up with the fella who gets them involved in the heroin trade and the likes of that, he's kind of the main man that would kind of guide the main fella, Thomas Moran, what his name is in the book, the main protagonist in the book. And he was kind of his guidance of to be better, if you want to use that term.
Yeah.
At what he was doing. It was always from the outset that it was set that with his gang that they were always going to be like they were never going to work, and it was like, I'm going to get to where I want to get. I'm going to make all this money. Fuck the state, fuck the rules, and we are doing this our way. And if you get in the way, tough shit.
You're gone.
Yeah. And that kind of flows right the way through the book. And of course, there is a lot of characters in the book that come and go. And
they're what make it, are they?
Yeah. Because it was actually my mother again who was saying that. She goes, yes, there is a lot of characters in it. She's 73 and she's going to go, my head is spinning. And she says that every person is in that book in the moment of the time for a reason.
Yes.
You know? And then, like, some of the chapters might be 12 pages long, some of them might be 32 pages long. The reason being is because I couldn't split a story when they were organising shipments and starting out to be smugglers in two. You can't split that story in two. It has to be one story. It has to be a whole. And then when they were organising in Dublin and outside of Dublin, like, there's a lot of cities and stuff. It comes back to Write What You Know, and the likes of Amsterdam and Berlin are in the book.
Are they? Amsterdam especially?
Yeah, I've been there, you know, and I know those cities because I've been in them. And I think Edinburgh, Liverpool, Dublin, Athlone, you know, you know, Limerick, they're all in there, and they're in there for reasons that become apparent when you read the book. And it all just falls into place. Well, I would say that anyway, you know.
Yeah.
But it all just falls into place and it doesn't go from heroin to cocaine, back to heroin, then to hash.
Doesn't it?
No, it elevates to what it was, but the heroin would always still stay there.
Okay.
The hash was always there, but then the cocaine comes in big time. But the heroin and the hash kind of took a backseat to the cocaine in a way, because especially in the 90s and into the noughties.
The noughties, yeah.
The cocaine exploded. But what happened was that with the heroin still being in the background there, people were forgetting that we still had heroin addicts in the city.
Yes.
Where everyone goes, "There's cocaine's everywhere." I says, well, so is heroin. And the likes of that. You know? And we've many heroin addicts now as we did then.
No, I know. Well, you know, there's so many things that when you think about how our drugs have kind of changed over the years, like you said, the heroin's still always there, cocaine and the hash is there. But like you look now, like just the prescription drugs, they're like selling like synthetic morphine and on the streets, and like it's the opioids and
everything. Yeah.
That's crazy. And they're making just as much as money on that as they probably were back on whatever, like on the heroin even.
Yeah, it's mad, like, you know. And the thing is that, like, it was over the years that it just grew from the heroin in the early 80s into something. And even Larry Dunn, I'll say his name, Larry Dunn even says, "You think we're bad, you want to see what's coming behind us." That was the famous line he said.
That's right, you know? Yeah.
And look, where I'm from, I grew up, and as I said, and grew around a lot of what happened, you know. And it's not like, as I said, I'm not an all-knowing oracle of what happened. I'm just writing it as I see it and writing with the research and put a story together that is kind of like, I think it's good, you know.
It's really interesting. Sorry, I have a cat that decided to jump up in front of my camera. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I can't believe that. Like, my house is so quiet because with all the dogs and the kids and it, like,
no, normally they're jumping out. They're literally jumping around. I told them this is a good one. Keep quiet.
But and it's the whole thing of the story. And I go back to when I was starting off in the early 80s, and I says there's a story here, but there's another story in that somewhere else, which maybe would be CPAD, would have a story on its own. I'm not saying that I'm going to write a story on CPAD. You know, a lot of talking with people about that, and other people will probably want to write that story. But like that's a story, like putting it out there, that's a story that has to be told by somebody.
Definitely,
absolutely, 100%. That's a story that has to be told.
Yes.
And where I am, I'm doing something completely different now at the moment, which I'll park until our next podcast in a year.
Oh yeah, no, I'll be looking forward to that. I'll be tormenting you. Where's that project you've been doing?
Like, and so that's a story. And I mean, there's so many stories within the story that can be told, and I just kind of put it all into one package and put it out there, and it kind of, as I said, people who are over 40 will know a lot of it, and people who are under 40 will kind of heard about a lot of it.
Yeah. And
then when you read the book, you kind of, was it really like that? And one or two of the people who read the book were actually kind of older dubs, and they were kind of going, fucking fairly nailed that. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
you know,
And there's a lot of people like younger generation coming along as well. And like I'm in my late 30s, but obviously grew up in Ballyfermot and I would have seen it and I would have been very like young to when all that started. But
yeah,
you were still living around it and like I still remember so many incidents and walking around the area I grew up in. Like you said earlier, there's so many fantastic people. And I'm very proud of a lot of people I knew in
oh
Ballyfermot,
yeah,
and still
yeah.
my mom is still there, and
I grew
and
up in a fantastic community in Crumlin. You know,
yeah, fantastic, and they do anything for anybody, and your neighbours were your neighbours, and they always stayed your neighbours, and still to
yeah,
this day, my mom's neighbours are.
you still
But
will.
you know, just I forget what I was going to say there. I just lost my train
Yeah,
of
no,
thought
it,
there
it is.
completely.
Look,
But you
essentially,
do, you
yeah,
grew up in it, you lived in it,
yeah,
and you kind of even I'm in my late 30s, I can still say, Jesus, it was really bad years ago.
and
And
it
it
was.
is kind of it's still there. And kids
Yeah,
growing up nowadays, their parents are telling them to be careful of this and that, and that's out there. So
yeah,
it's still
that's.
there.
I don't sugarcoat it.
Mm.
You know, I don't sugarcoat it. I don't do the Hollywood thing with, and you know, big cars and jewelry and all that bollocks. Like, you know, I
Yeah, because
like,
that's very few.
yeah, because there is a couple of times in it, and again, this is kind of not really a spoiler. It's a moment in it where some poor dopey fucker who was
Mm.
involved with them does something stupid, and he ends up in a
Yeah,
ditch. You know,
yeah, yeah.
and anybody goes, that doesn't happen. Yes, it fucking
Oh, it
does.
bloody does.
You know,
Yeah,
it does. And
yeah.
like, and you know, if people kind of turn around to me, it wasn't that bad. Yes, it
It
was. It
was.
was.
Yeah,
It was that bad. You know, and
yeah.
even now it is bad. Like the reality of like, I think one of the opening parts of the thing is the reality of crime and drugs get a hold of a community and tear it apart.
They do, and I do remember, like you just said there, that that didn't happen. There was a lot of lads I went to school with, and all of a sudden they disappeared, and then they were being looked, their families looking for them, and it turned out that they had been murdered because they were probably out selling, and maybe the drugs got taken off them by the guards, and then that's it. Their lives are worth nothing. They're
Yeah.
thrown the canal.
It
Do you know
is.
what I mean? And that's how bad it was.
It is, and the unfortunate thing is that life is very cheap in that
Yeah, well,
country.
it is. It
No,
is.
it it's it kind of there's a broad thing there on it as well that reaches out into prostitution, and that
Yeah.
there's a bit of part from prostitution within the book, and there's also the part of sex trading and all
Okay.
involved with these massive gangs, and like in the book there is a part where the protagonist Thomas Morden does meet a foreign source.
Okay.
So what I was saying is that even though he didn't bring the heroin to Dublin at first, he does find a source that
Yeah.
he floods the place with his cocaine and his heroin and so on. And it just shows you the whole story behind. I won't go into that because that's kind of a fairly chunk
Yeah.
enough part of the book.
Yeah.
And then they start importing and how they import it and all that.
So that's the stuff a lot of people don't know, that's the
Yeah.
really interesting part. All we knew was here and the devastation it was causing.
Yeah.
Tell me, where did you get the name from?
The Black Pill, would you believe it was the very first thing I thought of, because what is Dublin? It's on Dublin.
Yeah, Dublin. Yeah, that's what I was. Yeah, it was my aunt who told me that today, believe it or not.
The Black Pill is on Dublin. The Black Pill, that's it basically. And I was kind of thinking to myself, what better for a crime story about a city?
Fucking fantastic. Genius.
Black Pill. Oh yeah, I mean it was written for me. The name is there. And because I probably copped onto it because the daughter runs through Crumlin, and that runs to the Black Pill. And that was one of the first things I came up with for the book.
That's what my aunt said to me earlier, and she said, "Where Black Pill?" I said, "Geez, I don't know." I said, "Could it be because the heroin looks black?" I don't know. I mean, stupid, And she said, and then she came back to me. She said, "The Dublin is called the Black Pool, and it all got to do with the fight back in the Vikings or something." I don't know. I mean, like you said, the daughter made.
It was a Black Pill. Yeah, it was actually a Black Pill down by City Hall. But that's where the name of the book came from, was the Black Pill, and it was just a
genius,
eureka
fantastic.
moment. All of that. That's what it was.
Yeah. Tell me, I looked to buy it on Amazon, and it told me it sold out.
Yeah, what happens is, again, I was saying I'm not J.K. Rowling and Stephen King, because they won't order in 50,000 copies of the book because not them. But when it does say temporarily out of stock, sometimes it actually is sold out, which is great.
That's amazing.
That and other times it's they're just waiting for it to come back in. But you can pre-order it. It doesn't matter. You can pre-order it anyway, and
Right.
you'll get the book. Because I know that Hodges and Figgis in town.
Yeah.
I know that some people have been on to me, and they've got it within 7 days from them.
Nice one.
So you can get it from Hodges and Figgis in town. You get it on Amazon. Obviously, if people want to get the Kindle there, that's
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Waterstones as well.
So which way do bookshops work? Do they kind of put in an order with you, or sorry, not with you personally, but the publishing company?
Yeah, but
they send them a few.
Yeah, there's certain companies, very big ones in Ireland, as you know, that won't take in books because they have their own personal publishing companies that they deal with and who suppliers. So it's like if you're the next Taoiseach store, or if you're J.K. Rowling, or if you're Stephen King.
They're waiting on my book. That's what it is. They're waiting just to stock mine.
If you're the Bible, you know.
Exactly, yeah.
They order them books in en masse and they go straight to the shelf. But for me to get to the shelf, if I say everybody just buy off the one place, say for instance, which would be say Hodges and Figgis or Waterstone in Cork or something like that, you know, then they would say, "Holy shit, we're getting an influx of books here. Loads of people trying to buy this book here. Let's get it."
Let's get it. So everybody in Cork or wherever you are, I want you all to go out and start a big influx because I want to see it in Dublin.
Yeah.
When I'm in Blanchard Shopping Centre.
And I'll sign it for you. You know.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah, and that's the way it works. So, so far so good. Like the feedback seems to be good. People are sending me the picture of the book that they bought on Twitter.
That's fantastic.
Stuff like that, you know. And people are contacting me on Facebook and the likes. So you can find me on Twitter as well. It's
I looked for you on Twitter. Yesterday. Couldn't find. There was a couple of Robert Sargent, so I was afraid to tag one of them just in case it was some chap somewhere else. Like,
if you click in, it's that, you know, that photograph of the black and white photograph.
Okay.
Yeah, here I'll tell you now exactly. Trying to remember everything.
Oh, it's hard, isn't it?
Look, I'm my Twitter handle is here we are. It's
so people can tag you when they get the book as well.
Yeah. Or they can just follow me on there as well. It's at capital R _ author AUTHOR capital S. This is one SARGENT. So it's
ENT, and I'm going to put all them handles up on my pages as well, so people can, if you get the book, pre-order whatever, you tag Robert in them, because it's very important to see. It's nice, like, because you don't know who's reading your book, but when somebody tags you in them, it's nice to see. You know,
that kind of makes it. Is that who you're reading?
Are they actually reading it? Yeah, no.
It's nice when somebody comes back to you and says, "Yeah, that was all right. I thought it was okay, or I thought it was great, or I was shy." At least they bought it, you know.
At least they bought it, exactly. But as well, again, it's about the story. It's about the story that you took so kind of, not so long, because that would be an insult, but you did it over a period of time, and I'm sure, like you said, it was 9 drafts. You did it till you got it right.
Yeah, it was, and when I went away from the 3 years, I came back and read it. I was going, Jesus Christ, what were you thinking? You know, and another hint is don't wait when you're drunk. That's not a great idea.
That's when all the best stuff comes out, though.
Oh, no, it doesn't. Not when you're writing. It's probably in the back of your mind. It is like, but,
at the time.
It did, and there was a lot of I wouldn't say soul searching, but there was a lot of wanting to get it right, and I wanted to get it right. And that was important for me as the author of the book. You know, and for everybody else, if I got it right then, and I think it's right, then you're going to get a better book. And I went through a lot of drafts, as I said, and as I was writing it. And another hint for people as well, if you are writing the book, write it. Don't keep trying to edit every chapter. Write it. Get it out.
Ripping up pages, kind of,
Don't do that. Write the book and write the whole thing down and get it down on paper, and then say, right, I'm finished. Walk away from it for a couple of months and then come back to it again. That's
really good.
Yeah.
That's really good.
So when you come back to it again, it's kind of half fresh in your mind, and then you sit down and you read, oh, that was good. Oh, Jesus, that's terrible. You know, and then you can kind of mix and match it to whatever way you want. And another thing is, as I said, is write what you know and research what you know. You know,
the research is key, isn't it?
There's different strokes for different folks. I'm what they call a pantser. I write off the seat of my pants, as they say. So as I'm writing, I'm kind of building the story as I go along, where there's other people who are more organised, who'll know everything. They'll know this is going to happen then, that's going to happen then, and they've researched and got 10 pages over here already full with stuff for me. I'm like, fuck this, let's go.
I'm kind of a bit like that as well.
Yeah, and then the interesting thing about that is as you're going along in the story, oh yeah, that sounds good. We'll go with that.
Yeah.
And you're building it and you're building it, and then you'll be driving.
It's better.
Yeah, she thinks I'm nuts. I was sitting in bed probably at 3 o'clock in the morning. I said, oh fuck, and then something comes into your mind.
I was going to say, your poor wife.
Yeah, you got to write it down straight away, like, because if you remember something that's good, write it down, because I can guarantee you in an hour's time you'll forget about it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's where all the good content comes from.
That's where all the good content. So when you're doing something like that, write it down. Even if you send an email to yourself or text something like that, write it down and remember that, and then you'll go back and say, oh yeah, Jason, go in and write it down, and then you add it to the book. They're the type of tips. But again, finish the first draft and then come back to it. Don't keep edit all the time, because you never finish it. You'll never get there.
Exactly. That's a great tip. That really is. Robert, it's been fantastic talking to you. I talk all night about this book, but we'd only spoil the crap out of it.
Yeah, I've given away far too much already.
No, you haven't. No, see, that's the thing. I probably would have pushed for more, but because I'm dying to read it. I have it on pre-order. And what I'll do is I'll put links up for people to pre-order as well. We put up all the handles and we get this going, because I would hate to think that all that hard work has for nothing.
Oh, I know.
No, I hate that. That's not going to happen. And it hasn't happened, in fairness.
But it's, and I know I'm the author, but it definitely is something that the people will enjoy. In a sense, and will enjoy is probably, they'll relate to.
Yeah, and they will, because you lived it as well. And I think when you've lived something and you've written something, that makes it an awful lot of people can relate to that environment also.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So listen, it's been an absolute pleasure, and we will put all that stuff out there, and we'll be back in touch with it again. We're going to have you back for the trilogies, don't you know?
Okay, no problem at all.
Excellent, Robert. Take care. Thanks a million.
Cheers. Thank you.
Bye. Folks, that was Robert. I swear to God, I cannot wait to read that book. Honest to God, a lot of people love all that stuff. Like, they really love all the Dublin crime. I think Dubs are obsessed with that, and like particularly when we see the news and we see God. All the gangland stuff that has been going on, but we've also lived in that for years and years. We have, because like I said, I'm in my early 30s. No, I'm not. I'm in my late 30s, and everybody who's grown up in Dublin, have seen a lot of that. Let's face it, we've seen it. We've seen it on the news, and we've kind of lived it. I really enjoyed that, so let's hope you'll all get to read the book, because I'm actually really excited. Something for us to get stuck into. Turn off Netflix for a while. We've been on lockdown. We've been stuck in our houses for a long time. Maybe grab a book, head to the park. Sunny weather, why not? But I really enjoyed that. Anyway, folks, that's me for tonight. Hope you enjoyed that interview and this podcast. My next guest I will announce during the week. And thanks everybody for tuning in. It's been great. Take care, folks. Have a lovely Easter. Don't eat too much chocolate. I'll be back with you during the Easter holidays anyway. But I'll say we'll be all happy next week, not having to wake up at 7 in the morning, getting out to school. And unfortunately for the people who have to go to work. I don't. I'll have screaming kids from 9 in the morning, but look, at least I don't have to get out early in the morning on the school run. So take care, folks. Bye-bye.